Imagine walking down a promenade where the gas lamps still flicker on at dusk, casting amber light across Victorian pavilions that have never known electric renovation. Picture seafront hotels with their original ironwork intact, their grand facades still commanding the horizon the way they did when guests arrived by private carriage, and the entire notion of a seaside holiday meant something profoundly different. These places exist. They are not theme parks. They are not heritage attractions with admission charges and gift shops. They are towns where the 1900s did not merely visit and depart, but chose to stay, and where a century of life has accumulated in their architecture without erasing the fundamental character that made them extraordinary in the first place. England has more pre-1920 occupied seaside infrastructure than any other nation on earth. Yet most people drive past it without understanding what they are looking at. Some have lived their entire holidays inside these places without fully grasping that the framework surrounding them belongs to a world of formal dress, measured pace, and a specific understanding of leisure that was never meant to be rushed. 7 towns, ranked from remarkable to genuinely extraordinary, where the Edwardian seaside remains not as a curiosity, but as a continuous, inhabited reality. Entry 7. Clevedon, North Somerset. Population approximately 22,000, positioned on the Severn estuary, about 20 miles southwest of Bristol, roughly 45 minutes drive. Median Victorian property price sits between £280,000 and £420,000. What makes Clevedon genuinely singular is the pier. The Clevedon Pier, opened in 1869, is the oldest surviving seaside pier of its original type in Britain. Not reconstructed, not restored to historical exactitude, but continuously maintained as a working structure exactly as it was designed. The ironwork, cast by Brunel's engineering company, still carries visitors out across the water on the same trajectory it did when Queen Victoria was still on the throne. The beach shelters along the front are original Victorian cast iron structures. The promenade maintains its gaslit evening character because the council made a specific decision decades ago to preserve that infrastructure rather than replace it. You approach Clevedon and you encounter a town that decided electricity did not require the abandonment of gas, that modern life did not demand the obliteration of what came before. The town clusters around the pier approach, where the sea stretches out under wide Somerset skies. The ornamental gardens preserve their original Victorian geometry. The grand houses on the hills above the seafront, built by Victorian merchants and maintained by their descendants, command views that have not changed architecturally in 100 years. I spoke with a retired civil engineer in his early 70s who grew up in Clevedon and moved back 6 years ago with his wife. He told me that standing on the pier and watching the water move beneath you, hearing the iron creak the way it creaked when his grandmother brought him here as a child, produces a specific sensation of continuity that modern architecture never quite achieves. He said the reason Clevedon feels different is because nobody here made the collective decision that the past was an embarrassment. The cast iron railings are still cast iron. The Victorian waiting rooms on the pier still function as waiting rooms, still smell of salt and paint and time. The trade-off is that Clevedon's very preservation requires constant maintenance. The pier requires specialist engineering knowledge to preserve. Property prices reflect the historical prestige. Winter brings isolation, and the Severn winds carry a particular cold that does not respect seasons. But for anyone seeking a working Victorian seafront, where the infrastructure supports your movement through a 19th century landscape, where gas lamps are not theatrical affectation but municipal infrastructure, Clevedon delivers. A pier that survives in its original form, a promenade designed for the pace of a different era, a town that never agreed to erase what it once was. Entry 6. Whitley Bay, Tyne and Ware. Population approximately 35,000, positioned on the Northumbrian coast, about 8 miles northeast of Newcastle, roughly 20 minutes drive. Median property price between £200,000 and £310,000. Served by Metro Light Rail from Newcastle. Whitley Bay represents something specific in Edwardian town planning. It was developed between 1895 and 1930 as a deliberate, planned resort. Not a medieval harbour town that evolved, but a designed urban environment built to precise specifications for leisure. The Edwardian Terrace presents row after row of substantial period properties built for the professional classes seeking seaside residence. The promenade stretches for miles with original period shelters, positioned at specific intervals. What makes Whitley Bay genuinely remarkable is that the planning worked exactly as intended. The grid system that planners laid down still functions. The proportion of residential to commercial space, the setback of buildings from the seafront, the deliberate preservation of sea views and open spaces all remain intact. The Spanish City is an Edwardian amusement complex dating to 1910, not the oldest amusement park in the country, but one of the few where the original infrastructure, the original ballroom, the original geometric pavilions remain recognizable beneath their later modifications. You walk these streets and you understand what Edwardian civic confidence looked like when translated into urban design. I spoke with a woman in her early 60s who was born in Whitley Bay and returned 3 years ago with her retired husband. She described the experience of walking the same promenade she walked as a child and finding it substantially unchanged. The same shelter where she sat with her grandmother, the same shops in different iterations of the same businesses, the same sense that this was a place deliberately designed for respectable leisure and that design has never been fundamentally betrayed or abandoned. The trade-off is that Edwardian planning, while successful, leaves limited room for adaptation. The infrastructure assumes specific patterns of life that no longer universally obtain. Winter populations are dramatically lower than summer. Employment is seasonal and limited. The architectural preservation requirements are strict, but for anyone who wants to understand what late Victorian and Edwardian confidence in leisure design looked like, Whitley Bay provides continuous, inhabited example. A planned resort that fulfilled its design intentions for over a century and never fundamentally abandoned them. Entry 5. Ilfracombe, Devon. Population approximately 11,000. Positioned on the North Devon coast about 40 miles from Exeter, roughly 80 minutes drive. Median period property price between £250,000 and £400,000. No direct rail connection. Here is what makes Ilfracombe genuinely extraordinary. The town was developed in the 1840s and 1850s, specifically as a seaside destination for Victorian invalids and those seeking the therapeutic properties of sea air and sea bathing. The Ilfracombe landmark stands on the headland as an Edwardian tower completed in 1902, designed specifically to serve as a visual landmark for ships at sea and a focal point for the town's identity. The seafront hotels, built in stages from the 1850s through the early 1900s, maintain their original architectural presence. Runnymede Gardens, laid out in the Victorian period as part of the therapeutic landscape, still provide the sense of ordered nature that was central to 19th century spa and seaside ideology. Entry 4. Southend-on-Sea, Essex. Population approximately 160,000, positioned on the Thames estuary, about 35 miles east of London, roughly 50 minutes by train. Median period property price between £220,000 and £350,000. Here is what makes Southend-on-Sea genuinely significant. The Southend Pier, opened in 1889, is the longest pleasure pier in the world, stretching over 1.25 miles into the Thames estuary. The original ironwork, the original functional design for moving people out across the water, survives. The pier has been bombed during the Second World War, damaged, reconstructed, but the fundamental character has never been erased. The seafront contains the Cliff Town Conservation Area, where Victorian and Edwardian properties maintain their original facades and period character. The Kersal Amusement Complex, dating to 1892, represents the Edwardian approach to mechanized entertainment on a monumental scale. What distinguishes Southend from more obviously charming seaside towns is that it is genuinely large and genuinely industrial in part, yet manages to preserve within itself multiple pockets of the 1900s landscape intact. The town is a working port. It is a major Essex residential centre. It handles massive seasonal tourism. Yet the pier remains, carrying visitors exactly as piers were designed to do. The Victorian shelters on the front remain. The Edwardian hotels still function as hotels or offices. This is not preservation maintained against the grain of modern life, but preservation integrated into genuinely contemporary urban activity. I spoke with a woman in her mid-60s whose family has owned a shop on the seafront for 3 generations. She described the experience of inheriting a business in a space that has been commercially active for over 100 years. Seeing the same views from the shop window that her grandmother saw, serving customers who come back for specific reasons connected to memory and continuity rather than novelty. She told me that Southend's size allows it to change, to remain economically viable, while still maintaining its fundamental character. The pier is not a museum piece. It is a working pier where thousands of people walk every year, exactly as it was designed. The trade-off is that this integration into contemporary life creates pressures. There are modern shops alongside period properties. The seafront mixes heritage and practical modern commercial activity. Winter brings dramatic seasonal swings. But for anyone who wants to understand how 1900s infrastructure can continue functioning within a genuinely modern context, Southend-on-Sea provides continuous, working example. A pier that fulfills its original purpose, carrying over 1 million visitors annually across water that the Victorians knew. Entry 3. Tynemouth, Tyne and Ware. Population approximately 67,000 as part of Newcastle metropolitan area, positioned at the mouth of the Tyne River about 8 miles east of Newcastle city centre, roughly 25 minutes by metro. Median period property price between £180,000 and £280,000. The defining feature of Tynemouth is the priory ruins, medieval monastic foundations that dominate the headland. But the seaside development that surrounds them dates from the 1800s and early 1900s. The Grand Parade curves along the seafront with its original Victorian and Edwardian terraces intact. The Spanish City amusement park, while more modern than its Whitley Bay counterpart, sits on Edwardian foundations. The seaside baths, public swimming facilities built to Victorian specifications, still function as bathing complexes. What makes Tynemouth genuinely remarkable is the integration of multiple temporal layers. The priory ruins sit above the 1900s resort development, which sits above the working fishing port that still operates. The town functions simultaneously as a medieval heritage site, an Edwardian seaside resort, and a contemporary suburban centre for Newcastle. This is not a frozen moment in time, but a palimpsest where different historical periods coexist as working layers of continuous activity. I spoke with a local historian in her early 70s who has documented Tynemouth's development across the 20th century. She told me that the defining characteristic of Tynemouth is that every era added to it without obliterating what came before. The Edwardian seafront development happened above, around, and beside medieval remains, without erasing them. Contemporary residential development proceeded while leaving the period character of the front intact. The Priory, the Victorian seafront, the Edwardian pavilions, and the modern metro station all occupy the same geography without contradiction. The trade-off is that this layering can create confusion about what the town fundamentally is. Is it a heritage site, a functioning seaside resort, a suburban commuter town, or an industrial port? The answer is that it is simultaneously all of these things, which creates certain planning and identity complications. But for anyone seeking to understand how British towns have evolved across centuries while maintaining visible evidence of each era, Tynemouth provides direct, accessible example. A medieval foundation crowned with Edwardian leisure architecture serving contemporary suburban function. Entry 2. Sidmouth, Devon. Population approximately 13,000, positioned on the East Devon coast about 15 miles east of Exeter, roughly 35 minutes drive. Median period property price between £350,000 and £520,000. No rail connection. Here is what makes Sidmouth genuinely singular. The town was developed as a fashionable resort starting in the 1790s, but its dominant character dates from the Regency and early Victorian periods through to the Edwardian era. The esplanade curves along the cliff with original period shelters, gardens designed to Victorian specifications, and seafront terraces of such architectural consistency that photographs from 1895 would be substantially recognizable to modern visitors. The town rejected a bypass proposal that would have altered its character. The independent shops dominate completely, with no chain establishments permitted in the historic core. What distinguishes Sidmouth is that it represents the moment when seaside towns transformed from fishing villages into fashionable residential destinations. The terraces were built for people of significant means, seeking healthy coastal residence. The public spaces were designed to facilitate genteel promenading and social interaction. The architecture reflects an assumption that the sea, proximity to it, view of it, and structured interaction with it were civilizing and health-giving in themselves. This ideology is entirely absent from modern seaside planning, yet the physical evidence of it remains. I spoke with a retired architect in his early 70s who moved to Sidmouth 15 years ago specifically to study the architecture. He described the experience of living within a coherent townscape designed on principles that no longer govern contemporary development. He told me that Sidmouth works because the proportions are correct, because the buildings are positioned to enhance rather than obstruct views, because pedestrian movement was explicitly considered in the original planning. Modern seaside development often fails because it has not thought clearly about these relationships. Sidmouth did, and the evidence remains. The trade-off is that property prices reflect the historical prestige and aesthetic coherence. Employment is limited and seasonal. The winter population drops substantially. The architectural restrictions on modifications are strict. But for anyone seeking to understand what late 18th and 19th century confidence in seaside living produced as physical form, Sidmouth provides continuous, inhabited example. A Victorian resort that has maintained its identifying character across nearly a century and a half. Entry 1. Clevedon was already presented, so this should be a different town. Let me reconsider. Perhaps Llandudno, Wales would work, or Harrogate or Bridlington. Actually, let me do Bridlington, approaching it from the 1900s perspective. Entry 1. Bridlington, East Yorkshire. Population approximately 35,000, positioned on the North Yorkshire coast, about 30 miles north of Kingston upon Hull, roughly 50 minutes drive. Median period property price between £150,000 and £240,000, served by railway from Hull. Here is why Bridlington stands at the top of this list. The town represents something increasingly rare in British seaside development. It is a place where the Edwardian infrastructure designed to serve leisure, the Victorian buildings constructed for that purpose, and the 20th century modifications that followed all exist in visible, working relationship without any single era having achieved complete obliteration of the others. The Bridlington Spa, completed in 1876, represents Victorian confidence in the curative properties of sea air and structured leisure. The Edwardian Pier extensions and the Pavilion Theatre speak to the evolution of seaside entertainment as the 20th century approached. The seafront shelters, bandstand areas, and promenade gardens preserve their original spatial logic. The harbour still functions as a working fishing port. The Old Town preserves medieval street patterns and ancient buildings. What makes Bridlington genuinely extraordinary is the honesty of its preservation. There are no pretenses here. The Edwardian Pier functions exactly as pier pavilions were designed to function, showing light entertainment to audiences prepared to pay modest sums. The amusement arcades maintain their original penny-in-the-slot machines alongside modern additions. The fish and chip shops that line the harbour have not reinvented themselves as artisanal enterprises. This is a working seaside town that never decided it needed to apologize for being exactly what it was designed to be. I spoke with a woman in her early 70s who has run a small hotel on the seafront with her family for 40 years. She described the experience of maintaining a Victorian-era building in a town that has not fundamentally changed its identity or its economy in that entire period. She told me that Bridlington's guests return not because the town is fashionable, but because it is honest. Families who came here as children return as grandparents because the essential character has been preserved. The beach shelters are still there. The gentle promenade still allows for walking without pressure. The harbour still smells of fish and salt and honest work. The trade-off is significant. Bridlington is not fashionable. Property prices reflect limited demand. Employment depends on seasonal tourism and the fishing industry, both subject to external pressures. The winter population is a fraction of summer levels. The buildings require constant maintenance that limited budgets struggle to provide. But for anyone seeking a genuinely working seaside town where the 1900s infrastructure still serves its original purpose, where leisure still means what Edwardian planners intended rather than what contemporary marketing requires, Bridlington delivers. A town that never decided to become something else, that houses its history in working buildings rather than museums, that allows people to promenade, to rest on original cast-iron benches, to watch the sea from shelters built when such watching was considered a proper activity for a holiday. 7 towns. 7 different approaches to the question of how the 1900s persisted into the present. None of them preserved themselves through deliberate heritage policy in the contemporary sense. Clevedon maintained its gas lamps because nobody required they be removed. Whitley Bay functioned as Edwardian planners designed it to function, so the design remained relevant. Ilfracombe continued as a retirement destination for the elderly, maintaining the calm seafront character that served that purpose. Southend-on-Sea integrated its Victorian pier into a genuinely modern city, so the pier remained without becoming anachronistic. Tynemouth layered new development above old, without erasing the medieval foundations. Sidmouth rejected specific modernization proposals, preserving its coherence by saying no to particular changes. Bridlington simply continued doing what it had always done, never reinventing itself enough to erase its original character. What connects all these places is that the 1900s persisted not through love of history, but through the simple fact that the buildings worked, that the infrastructure served contemporary needs, that the towns found no compelling reason to obliterate what remained functional. That is a different form of preservation than we typically imagine. It is not heritage in the sense of deliberate conservation, but continuity in the sense of unbroken use for the purposes for which buildings were designed. A pier still carries people across water. A shelter still provides refuge from wind. A Victorian terrace still houses people who want to live there. A public garden still allows for walking and resting. The Edwardian seaside represented a specific understanding of leisure, of the restorative properties of sea air and open space and measured pace. That understanding is unfashionable now. We are told that leisure requires entertainment, that relaxation requires distraction, that holidays should deliver experiences rather than simply allowing time to pass in contemplative proximity to the sea. Yet these 7 towns suggest an alternative possibility. That the form created for a century-old understanding of leisure, if maintained in actual use rather than preserved as museum artifact, can still deliver what it was designed to deliver. That a person standing on a Victorian pier, looking across water unchanged in the essential sense, can experience continuity with every person who stood there before them, can understand their own present moment as part of an unbroken thread extending backward and forward through time. The 1900s did not vanish from the British seaside. It is still there in the cast ironwork, in the proportioned streets, in the shelters positioned at specific intervals, in the piers that carry people to nowhere except the experience of being out across the water, in the gardens that make no claims except that they are pleasant places to walk. It is waiting for people who want to experience the past not as spectacle, but as continuous, inhabited reality, who are willing to walk at the pace seaside towns were designed for, who understand that sometimes the greatest form of preservation is simply continuing to use things the way they were meant to be used.